I never meant to open the glove compartment. I just wanted to sell the car. The payments were overdue again, and the bank had started calling every other day. That morning, with the sky in Seattle smeared in shades of wet gray and the air thick with that lingering dampness after rain, I stood in front of Michael's old sedan and told myself it's just a car. But the moment I reached for the handle, my hand trembled. It had been 32 days since he died. 32 days since the hospital called and used words like aneurysm and no time to respond. 32 days of Lily not saying more than 10 words to me unless it was about school or groceries. And even those words felt like fragments, like pieces from another version of our lives that no longer fit. That morning, I found myself alone in the kitchen, stirring cold tea with a spoon too loudly. The clink against ceramic used to annoy Michael. Now, it filled the silence like a ghost of our old quarrels. The family photo still sat by the window, Michael smiling with his arms around me, and Lily, taken last summer in Cannon Beach. We looked happy in it, real, and I wondered when exactly the illusion had begun. "Breakfast is ready," I called up the stairs. I knew Lily wouldn't answer. Her bedroom door thudded shut minutes ago, the sound sharp and final. 17 is hard, grieving at 17 is brutal. But watching your daughter turn into a stranger is something else entirely. The car sat at the far end of the driveway, speckled with pollen and streaks of grime, like it hadn't been touched since the funeral. Michael used to wash it every Sunday, polishing the hood until it gleamed. He believed a man's car said everything about him. I didn't care about that. I just wanted to be able to pay the gas bill. I took the spare keys from the kitchen drawer and walked out. It had started to drizzle again, that misty kind of Seattle rain that doesn't soak you, but sneaks under your skin anyway. I climbed into the driver's seat and closed the door. The air inside was stale, but unmistakably his. A mix of cedarwood, cologne, leather, and something else, something I couldn't name, but felt like memory. I reached toward the glove compartment, hesitating only for a second. The click sounded louder than I expected. Inside were the usual things: insurance papers, an old phone charger, sunglasses. I picked them out one by one, placing them neatly on the passenger seat. Then I saw it, a small, black USB drive wedged deep in the back corner. Plain, except for a tiny label with a handwritten letter, and I stared at it. Just a letter, just a piece of plastic. But something in me shifted. I felt it in my gut. This wasn't just a glove box anymore. It was the start of something I hadn't prepared for. I held the drive in my palm, rain tapping on the windshield, and suddenly I was no longer a widow cleaning out a car. I was a woman standing at the edge of a truth I never saw coming. And I wasn't sure I wanted to know what it was. I didn't plug it in right away. I just stood there in the kitchen, staring at the USB drive like it might explode if I touched it wrong. The letter, N, on the label was smudged, probably written in a rush. It wasn't Michael's handwriting. That was the first thing I noticed. His penmanship was always precise, like every letter marched in formation. This was rushed, personal. A name, maybe? I carried the drive upstairs to the study, Michael's study, though I'd avoided calling it that since he died. The room still smelled like him. Books on immigration law lined the shelves. A framed certificate from a refugee organization hung above the desk. That had always been his passion, helping displaced people find legal footing. He never talked about the details, just said, "I'm doing some good," and changed the subject. The screen lit up as I opened the laptop. My hands hovered over the keyboard. For a second, I imagined putting the drive away, pretending I never found it. But the moment had passed. The USB slid into the port with a click too loud in the quiet house. A folder appeared. No name, just a plain yellow icon. I opened it. Inside were dozens of files, letters, photos, PDFs labeled with codes, and numbers I didn't recognize. I clicked on the first document, and the words blinked into view. "Dear Michael, thank you again for agreeing to help. I honestly don't know what I would have done without you. Marina. I froze. Marina. That name didn't belong to my life. It didn't belong to Michael's either. Or at least, not the part of him I'd known. My stomach tightened. I opened another file. I'm so scared. Eli's fever hasn't gone down for days. I know I said I wouldn't ask again, but if you can help with the clinic, another. Eli asked about you again. He keeps saying he wants to fly kites like last time. He misses you and I do too. My mouth went dry. The cursor blinked at me like it was daring me to keep going. Photos came next. A woman with deep brown eyes and tired cheeks. A boy, maybe 7 or 8, light hair, warm smile. In some pictures, they stood alone. In others, Michael was with them, arms draped around them, laughing, smiling the way he used to smile with us. I backed away from the desk like it might burn me. My knees nearly gave out. I clutched the edge of the chair, breathing hard. Who was Marina? Who was the boy? Who had Michael been, really? I didn't hear the door open until it was too late. What are you doing? Lily's voice cut through the fog like a shard of glass. She stood in the doorway, her hoodie draped over pajama shorts, eyes puffy like she hadn't slept. Her gaze moved from the screen to the USB, then back to me. Are you spying on Dad? Her voice cracked. Lily, no, she snapped, stepping forward. You're going through his stuff like he was some criminal. He's dead, Mom. Can't you just let him be? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The weight of it all sat like stone on my chest. She turned on her heel. You're unbelievable. The door slammed behind her, and I was left staring at the screen, at a version of my husband I didn't recognize, a version that now lived in my daughter's anger and a stranger's eyes. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the rain whispering against the windows like it was trying to say something I couldn't quite hear. My mind ran in circles, names, dates, letters. The image of Michael's arms around that boy, the way he looked at him, the way he used to look at Lily. At dawn, I got up, made coffee, and went back to the study. I opened the folder again, slower this time, letting the reality settle. The files weren't random. The letters from Marina stretched across years, some tender, others practical. But one thing was consistent. The boy, Eli. His name came up in every message. I searched Michael's email accounts next. Most were locked, but one was still open. The inbox was empty, cleaned out. The USB must have been where he stored everything personal, everything separate. I checked the financial statements I'd ignored for weeks. I wasn't looking for numbers. I was looking for patterns. There they were. Transfers. Always on the 1st and the 15th of each month. Small amounts, just enough to fly under suspicion. But over time they added up. Thousands. All to the same account. The name listed wasn't Marina. Just initials, M.A. But I didn't need more than that. I copied the account number and pulled up the scanned documents from the USB. One of the PDFs contained a scanned rental agreement, a lease signed 3 years ago. The address jumped off the page. South Seattle, Rainier Valley, a neighborhood I rarely visited. I stared at the address for a long time. The last time I'd been to that part of the city, Lily was still in braces. We'd gone to an art exhibit near Columbia City, and Michael had insisted on taking the long way home to avoid traffic. Now, I realized maybe he hadn't been avoiding traffic at all. I didn't tell Lily I was leaving. She hadn't spoken to me since the night before. I left a note on the counter, just in case, and took the keys to my old Subaru. The streets were slick from the rain, the clouds heavy with more. Seattle always looked soft in the morning mist, like a watercolor left out in the weather too long. As I drove, I rehearsed what I might say. I'm his widow. No, I found your letters. Too aggressive. I just want to understand. Maybe that was closer to the truth. It took me 40 minutes to reach the address. A modest 2-story apartment complex nestled between a taqueria and a laundromat. The building had peeling paint and a rusted bike rack out front. But the small garden near the entrance was well kept, lavender and sage growing in narrow rows. I parked across the street and stayed in the car. I didn't know what I expected to see, but I saw them before I was ready. A woman stepping out of the building, grocery bags in hand. Long dark hair tied back. Behind her, a boy with a backpack, bounding down the stairs, talking too fast for her to keep up. She laughed. I didn't need confirmation. It was them. She was Marina. And that boy was Eli. And even from a distance, I could see it in his face. The light hair, the slope of his nose, the way his mouth turned up when he smiled. He looked just like Michael. I should have gotten out of the car. I should have walked up and said something, anything. But I didn't. I just sat there, heart pounding against my ribs, fingers clenched around the steering like it was the only thing holding me together. Across the street, Marina adjusted her coat and nudged Eli forward. He bounced ahead, waving at someone near the corner. She followed, her steps quick and careful. They disappeared, and I stayed frozen. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt this quiet kind of collapse, like something inside me had quietly caved in on itself without making a sound. By the time I got home, the sky had turned a deeper gray, and the house felt colder than I remembered. Lily wasn't in the kitchen. Her plate was still in the sink from last night. The note I left sat exactly where I'd put it, untouched. Her door was closed. I didn't knock. I didn't have the energy to fight again. Instead, I made tea and stared out the window. The tree in our backyard had started to change, its leaves tinged with gold and red, hanging heavy with the weight of an early autumn. I almost didn't notice the silence breaking behind me. I read everything. Lily's voice was soft, but sharp, like a whisper meant to wound. I turned and saw her standing by the staircase, holding the USB drive in her hand. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes swollen. She had been crying. I opened my mouth, but the words didn't come. "You found it in Dad's car, didn't you?" she asked. "The pictures, the letters, all of it." I nodded. "I didn't go looking," I said. I just wanted to clean it out before selling it. That's all." "Is it true?" Her voice cracked. "Did he have another family?" My throat tightened. "I don't know if it was a family, Lily. I don't know what it was." She shook her head slowly. "Don't lie to me. Not now." I stepped forward, but she pulled back. "You always hated how close I was to him," she said. "You were always so disappointed. In everything. In me. In him. And now that he's gone, you're digging through his secrets like it proves you were right all along." "That's not fair," I whispered. "I didn't want any of this." "But you kept reading." Her hand trembled. "You didn't stop." "No," I admitted, voice low. "I didn't." She swallowed hard, tears gathering again. "I hate this. I hate that he's not here to explain. I hate that I don't know who he was. And I hate you for showing me." The words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. She turned away. "I'm going to Grandma's." "Lily, no." She disappeared up the stairs, and I heard drawers opening, bags being filled. 10 minutes later, the door slammed shut. I didn't chase her. I just stood there, holding the mug of tea now gone cold, staring at the spot where she'd been, and wondering how many pieces a heart could break into before it stopped trying to hold anything at all. The next morning, I found myself back in Michael's study, surrounded by the life he left behind. His desk was still meticulously organized, like he'd only stepped away for a moment. The silence in that room was heavier than anywhere else in the house. I stood there, unsure of what I was looking for. Some kind of clarity, maybe. Some final sign. Then I remembered the USB folder, the document with a scanned letter, a line tucked at the bottom. All documents secured in safety deposit box. Key in right drawer, cufflink case. I moved slowly, almost afraid that if I opened the drawer, I'd find something I couldn't unsee. Inside, nestled beneath a stack of old receipts and clipped ties, was the wooden cufflink box I gave him for our 5th anniversary. When I lifted the lid, there it was. A small silver key with a numbered tag and the logo of a local bank downtown. I drove there without telling anyone, without really thinking. The man at the front desk recognized Michael's name immediately. Apparently, he'd been coming there for years. After a brief signature check and an awkward silence, he led me to a private vault room and left me alone with the deposit box. It wasn't locked with a code, just that simple key. Inside was a thick folder, 3 flash drives, and a sealed envelope marked with my name. My breath caught. I didn't open the folder first. I opened the letter. Michael's handwriting filled the page, firm, slanted, familiar. A little rushed, but unmistakably his. Emma, if you're reading this, it means something's happened. Maybe I'm gone. Maybe you found the drive or the files. Maybe you already know more than I ever managed to say. I don't know how much time I have, but I do know I owe you the truth. All of it. I made mistakes. I sat down. The words blurred for a moment, but I kept reading. He told me about Marina, how they'd met during a volunteer clinic for undocumented immigrants, how she was scared, alone, trying to protect her baby, how, during a period when her marriage had been cold and silent, he crossed the line. It wasn't a long affair, he said. It was just one night, a night that changed everything. I thought I could walk away, that I could forget, but I couldn't, not when I found out about Eli. I didn't tell you because I was afraid of losing you, losing Lily. I told myself I was protecting our family, but really I was protecting myself. He described how 3 years ago, Marina came back into his life, desperate, with Eli sick and facing deportation. He couldn't ignore them, couldn't let a child suffer. He helped with papers, medical bills, and yes, money. Quietly, regularly. I know I should have told you. I know this is too much to ask. But if you can find a way to forgive me, please look after them. Not Marina, she's strong. But Eli, he's just a boy. He didn't ask for any of this. And protect Lily. If anything I've done puts her at risk, shield her. Whatever it takes. Everything else, documents, names, accounts, is in the folder. I trust you, even if I didn't deserve to. Always yours. Michael, when I finished reading, I didn't cry. I just sat there, the letters shaking in my hands, feeling like every piece of my world had tilted slightly, and yet somehow, for the first time in weeks, I understood. I didn't go home right away. I sat in my car outside the bank for a long time, watching the city pass me by. Somewhere nearby, a construction crew jackhammered the sidewalk. A man with a briefcase rushed past, muttering into his phone. Life moved forward, oblivious, unchanged, but I had just read a letter that split mine in two. When I got home, the house was quiet. Lily's room was still empty. My phone buzzed with a single text from my mother-in-law. She's here. Safe. Give her space. I stared at the screen for a while, then turned it face down on the counter. That evening, I opened the folder Michael had left behind. Names, contact logs, medical records. One document detailed his petition to help Marina apply for legal residency. Another, a birth certificate with Eli's name, listing Michael as the father. I thought about that little boy, Eli, and his mother, who now carried the burden of a life built on silence. What had Michael been to them? Savior? Secret? Ghost? The next morning, I drove back to Rainier Valley. I didn't call. I didn't warn her. I stood across the street again, this time clutching the envelope Michael had addressed to Marina. She answered the door on the second knock. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and for a moment neither of us moved. "You're Emma," she said softly. I nodded. "Yes." She looked behind me, as if expecting someone else. Her voice trembled. "Is Lily okay?" "She's with her grandmother." A pause. Then, "Would you like to come in?" Her apartment was small, tidy, and smelled faintly of lavender and something warm from the kitchen. I sat on the edge of the couch while she poured tea without asking, her hands graceful but tense. "I don't know what you've been told," she said carefully. but I never meant to destroy anything. I believe you, I said, and I meant it. I slid the envelope across the table. He left this for you. She didn't open it immediately. Her fingers traced the edge as if trying to absorb whatever message lay inside. I loved him, she whispered, eyes glistening. Not the way you did. Not with a house and a wedding ring. But he saved us. I let the words hang in the air. I could have argued, could have corrected her, but I didn't. What would have been the point? Eli thinks his father worked far away, she continued, that he was too busy to visit much, but that he cared. Inevalit? I just never explained. I nodded. And now, she asked, voice small, what happens now? I didn't have an answer, only that I saw a boy who looked like my husband, a woman who had carried too much alone, and a daughter who needed me to be more than angry and betrayed. So I said we figured out, slowly, kindly, for the children. She looked up, surprised. You don't have to do this, she said. No, I whispered, tears pricking the corners of my eyes. But someone does. And for the first time since Michael died, I didn't feel like I was breaking apart. I felt like I was beginning again, not from scratch, but from truth. Lily came home 3 days later. She didn't knock. She didn't text. I just heard the door open in the middle of the afternoon, followed by the shuffle of her sneakers on the tile and the heavy thud of her duffel bag hitting the floor. I was in the kitchen, slicing apples. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then her voice, flat and cautious, cut through the quiet. So, did you meet them? I didn't look up. Yes. She stepped closer. And it was complicated, I said, laying the knife down. But they're not monsters. Marina isn't the villain. She's just someone who made hard choices. Like your dad. Like me. She let out a bitter laugh. Choices. Right. I turned to her slowly. Lily, I know you're angry. No. I'm confused. I'm disgusted. I thought I knew who he was, Mom. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through it. He was my hero. And now, I don't know if he even wanted to be my dad, or if I was just the family he settled for. I took a breath, stepping toward her. Don't say that. Why not? Her eyes brimmed with tears. You're thinking it too. I shook my head. No, I'm heartbroken. But I don't think you were ever second. I think he was torn, and he made the worst possible decision. He hid instead of facing it. She crossed her arms, jaw tight. I don't want to meet that boy. I don't care who he is. You don't have to, I said gently. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I want you to understand something. I reached into the drawer and pulled out Michael's letter. The original. I held it out, and after a long pause, she took it. I don't need to read his excuses, she muttered. They're not excuses, I said. They're the truth. He didn't have the courage to tell us while he was alive. And maybe they're the only way we move forward. She stared at the envelope in her hands like it might catch fire. Then she walked past me and disappeared into her room. The door didn't slam this time. That night, I passed by her door on the way to bed. The light was still on. I hesitated, then kept walking. Some grief isn't ready to be touched. Some forgiveness can't be rushed. I didn't hear her cry, but I knew she was, and I didn't cry either. I just lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many versions of Michael had existed. The husband, the father, the man who held another child's hand while ours waited at home. And still, I missed him. God help me, I missed him. Not just the man I thought he was, but even the flawed, selfish one I now knew. Because even in his betrayal, he tried to leave us something softer than rage. The next morning, I sat by the window and wrote a letter of my own. Not to Michael, but to Eli. Dear Eli, you don't know me. Not really. Maybe your mother has mentioned my name, maybe not. That's okay. I'm not writing to confuse you or to claim anything from you. I'm writing because sometimes the adults around you make choices that leave children holding questions they never asked to carry. My name is Emma. I was married to your father, Michael. I don't know what he told you. Maybe you think he was a man too busy to be around. Or maybe you've always felt his absence and made peace with it. But the truth is he loved you, quietly, from a distance, in the only way he thought he could. That's not enough. It wasn't fair to you, and it wasn't fair to my daughter, Lily, either. But here's what I need you to know. Your existence is not a mistake. You are not someone's secret. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a boy with a full laugh and a curious mind. A boy who loves science experiments and still sleeps with one leg outside the blanket. A boy who runs faster than his mother can keep up and who asks why more often than most people have answers. I know these things because I saw you once from across the street, and in that moment, I saw my husband smile in your face. It stopped me cold. I won't pretend this is easy. For any of us, my heart is still heavy with grief and betrayal. And Lily, she's still trying to understand why the man who taught her how to ride a bike had a whole other life she never knew about. But despite the weight of all that sadness, I want you to know something simple and honest. You are not to blame. You are loved. You deserve every good thing. One day, if you ever want to talk or ask questions, or just sit with someone who knew your father in a different way, I'll be here. Not as a replacement for anything, but maybe as a bridge. Until then, be kind to your mother. She's braver than most. And be kind to yourself, especially when the world feels confusing. With warmth. Emma, I folded the letter slowly, hands trembling, not from fear, but from something else. A release. A quiet exhale of something I'd been holding on to for far too long. I didn't mail it right away. I placed it in an envelope, addressed it, and tucked it into the top drawer of my desk. A part of me hoped Marina would find it one day, or that Eli would, years from now, and understand that while the truth hurt us, it didn't have to ruin us. Later that afternoon, Lily came into the kitchen. Her eyes were tired, her voice quiet. I read the letter, she said. I nodded. I don't forgive him yet. You don't have to, I replied. But I don't hate him either, she whispered, and for the first time her voice didn't shake. We stood there, side by side, the late sunlight slanting through the window, catching the dust in the air like falling stars. Healing didn't look like a grand declaration. It looked like standing still and not walking away. Autumn came slowly that year, the kind of fall where mornings held a gentle chill, and the trees seemed reluctant to let go of their leaves. I started baking again, small things like apple bread and blueberry muffins. The house smelled warm, like cinnamon and sugar and something almost like peace. Lily spent most of her days at school or in her room, but now and then, she'd drift into the kitchen and sit across from me. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't, but I noticed the silence between us had softened. One evening, I found her curled up on the couch, watching old home videos on her laptop. She didn't hide the screen when I walked in. It was a clip from her 10th birthday, Michael wearing a ridiculous party hat, holding the cake slightly off balance while she giggled behind cupped hands. He had frosting on his chin. I watched my past self reach forward and wipe it away. We were all laughing. I miss him, she murmured without looking up. I sat beside her. I do too. She leaned her head against my shoulder. It was the first time she'd done that since the funeral. Do you think he meant to fix it? She asked. I thought for a long moment. I think he was trying, in the only broken way he knew how. She nodded. That seemed enough for now. The next day, I got a message from Marina. Just a photo. It was Eli sitting at a science fair booth, grinning beside a poster about volcanoes. In his hands was a tiny papier-mâché mountain, clearly handmade, clearly his. The caption read, "He got second place. He wanted you to know." I stared at it for a long time, smiling through a fresh wave of tears. Later, I showed it to Lily. She studied the image for a beat too long. "He looks like Dad," she whispered. "I know." She didn't say anything else, but she didn't look away either. We didn't try to force anything. There were no promises, no timelines. Just space. Space to feel what we felt, without apology. Space to mourn and grow and shift. The kind of space that slowly, gently, allowed something else to take root. Not forgiveness, not exactly, but acceptance. And then, one cold Sunday morning, as I poured hot chocolate into two mismatched mugs, Lily asked, "Do you think he'd like to come over sometime? For dinner, maybe." The boy. My hand paused mid-pour. I looked up at her. She shrugged. "Just if he wants to." A quiet smile crept onto my face. "I think he might." She nodded and took a sip of her drink, eyes darting toward the window where frost patterned the glass. Outside, the leaves had finally begun to fall. Inside, something else was beginning to. Not a return to what we were, but the start of what we might become. The first time Eli came over, he wore a navy sweater 2 sizes too big and clutched a book to his chest like a shield. Marina stood behind him on the porch, giving me that nervous, polite smile of a mother trying not to overstep. Lily was the one who opened the door. They stared at each other for a moment, 2 teenagers with nothing in common, but everything tangled between them. "Hey," Lily said, voice low. "Hi," Eli replied, gripping the book tighter. There was a silence thick enough to stop time. Then, to my quiet surprise, Lily stepped aside. "You coming in or what?" And just like that, he did. Dinner was awkward. We kept it simple, spaghetti and garlic bread, something comforting. Marina and I sat at the far end of the table, letting the kids find their own rhythm. Eli barely touched his food. Lily kept sneaking glances at him, like she was studying a math problem that didn't quite add up. But when he mentioned that he loved physics, her eyes lit up. "That's my best subject," she said. "Really?" His voice cracked just slightly. "You like space stuff? Black holes, time dilation, all that." She twirled a strand of spaghetti. "I kind of want to be an astrophysicist." Eli blinked. "That's actually really cool." It wasn't much, but it was enough. After dinner, the kids went to the living room. I heard them talking, tentative at first, then with bursts of laughter that caught me off guard. Marina helped me wash the dishes, both of us moving in quiet rhythm. "You've raised a good girl," she said softly. "So have you." We didn't need to say more. There was a kind of peace between us now, not the kind that erased the past, but the kind that acknowledged it, nodded to it, and chose to move forward anyway. Before they left, Eli turned to me. "Thank you for the letter." I smiled. "You're welcome. And for tonight. It was nice." He hesitated, then, in a small voice, added, "Can I come again sometime?" I felt something warm unfold in my chest. Of course. Marina squeezed my hand before stepping out into the cold. I watched them go, a little boy and his mother, walking back into the night, but not into silence this time, not into shame. Later, as I was turning off the lights, Lily came to stand beside me at the front window. "He's okay," she said simply. I nodded. "He is." She leaned into my side, and we stood there like that for a while, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. No grand ending. No sweeping music. Just a porch light left on, 2 cups in the sink, and a home that had stretched wide enough to hold more than one truth, more than one kind of love. Because sometimes healing doesn't mean going back. It means building something entirely new and daring to let others in. Weeks passed, then months, and gradually what began as cautious visits became something quieter, more natural. Eli started coming by on Sundays, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to sit at the kitchen table while Lily did her homework and I folded laundry. He brought stories from school, science facts he'd memorized, and once, a wilted sunflower he'd tried to grow on his windowsill. It had barely survived the winter light, but he was proud of it anyway. "Next time I'll try basil," he said. "I'll help you," Lily offered. He looked surprised, but he nodded. They didn't talk much about Michael. Not to each other, not directly, but his absence was there in the room with us, like a shadow that no longer frightened anyone, only reminded us of where the light used to fall. Marina came sometimes too. At first, she stayed close to the door, always a little unsure, always ready to retreat. But then one afternoon, she brought over a tin of homemade tamales and a photo of Eli as a baby. We sat at the kitchen table, sipping cinnamon tea, while Lily asked cautious, curious questions. "He used to sleep on my chest," Marina said, smiling at the photo. "He'd curl up like a little bean, so warm I thought my heart might melt." I listened quietly, because the truth was, I never got to see Michael hold Eli. I never saw him be that father, but I could imagine it now, not to excuse the lies, but to accept the fullness of the man I had loved, the flawed, divided man, the one who had tried, in all the wrong ways, to do right by everyone. That spring, Lily asked if she and Eli could present a joint science project at the local community fair. They built a model of the solar system, painted each planet by hand, rigged tiny LED lights to mimic orbit paths. When they showed it off beneath the auditorium lights, I stood beside Marina in the back row, our hands brushing by accident. We didn't move them away. Afterward, Eli came running down the aisle with a red ribbon in hand, second place again. Lily trailed behind, cheeks flushed with pride. "I messed up the part about Jupiter's rotation speed," he groaned. "No one noticed," Lily said. "You were great." He grinned at her, and I swear it was the first time I saw something new in him, not just a resemblance to Michael, but a light all his own. That night, Lily came into my room. She sat on the edge of the bed, legs swinging like she was 10 years old again. "I don't think I'll ever stop being mad at Dad," she said. "I don't think you have to. But I'm glad Eli's here." My throat tightened. Me too. And in that moment, I realized something simple and powerful. We don't always get to choose how the story begins, but we can shape how it continues. We can choose grace. We can choose openness. We can choose family, even the kind born from fracture.